Timing is everything in life and on the radio. And without any further ado, let me just say his name is Victor Davis Hanson. He is an American columnist, military historian, scholar of ancient warfare, classics professor, and he is also the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Case for Trump. You may have seen him. He's a regular on Fox News, Hannity, Tucker Carlson. I think I might have seen the doctor last night on one of those shows. And he joins us right now. Professor Hanson, thanks so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to join us here on the Klein Time program.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting time in America's history, and nobody better to talk to than an expert in our history and all that encompasses. Before I get Professor Hanson, before I get to the book, The Case for Trump, I just wanted to ask you, your take on the media, the Democrat leadership's response to Attorney General Barr's assertion that spying on the Trump campaign did in fact occur. Whether or not there was a proper predicate or probable cause is something he's looking into. But what's your take on their response to what Attorney General Barr said?
Well, it was a political response. It wasn't an empirical one, because I think everybody understands now that even people in the FBI admit that they put Stephen Harper into the Trump campaign. By that I mean they contacted him to surveil or meet with or try to record people in the Trump campaign. And I think they also realized that they surveilled Carter Page because they knew that he had worked for the Trump campaign and that his communications when he did work for the Trump campaign would then be available to them. And I think they did. Everybody admits that they reverse targeted Michael Flynn through surveillance. I think everybody realizes as well that they were not willing to tell people that. So when they went to get 4 FISA warrants, they did not, by intention, tell the judge that the basis for those writs were a campaign document paid for by Hillary Clinton that wasn't verified and had been used in circular fashion to produce news accounts that they then produced for evidence as well. So there's a lot of legal exposure there, and I think it was a great disappointment because they told the country, they being the progressive movement, the Democratic Party and the media, that Trump was not only guilty of something called collusion, which isn't a crime, but I guess they meant by that conspiracy. He was not only guilty of that, but a team assembled by Robert Mueller that had 17 Democrats, some of them Clinton donors, would inevitably find him guilty, and then they would be by now introducing articles of impeachment. And then just the opposite happened. And here we are in the third year of Trump's governance with this sequence of failures that the Democrats and the media tried to use. I mean, they tried to sue immediately. Jill Stein sued to overturn the election, and then there was the effort to tell the Electoral College electors not to vote the way their states had voted. And then there was the Logan Act and the Emoluments Clause, and they said Trump was crazy, needed to be removed under the 25th Amendment. And there was the Stormy Daniels psychodrama, and then there was the Michael Cohen, the Mueller investigation, the tax returns. And so it's all a sequence of trying to abort a presidency when they could just wait till 2020. But I don't think they want to, because now Trump has a record, and what everyone feels about him, there's not much to complain about. 3% annualized GDP or record low unemployment for minorities, or near record peacetime unemployment, vast increases in energy production, strict, very qualified judges, some pretty spectacular things overseas with kind of making NATO readdress their plans of their breaking their promises of not spending 2% of GDP on military defense, or the destruction of ISIS, or some progress of North Korea to cease its missile and nuclear testing. And so we wish we would have a debate on that record, but I don't think they're going to have a debate on that record. And then more importantly, there's legal exposure that people like James Clapper and John Brennan and Andrew McCabe and James Comey, and perhaps even Peter Strzok or Lisa Page or Sally Yates or Susan Rice did things that were either very unethical or more likely illegal.
Well, I was going to ask you then, there's so many tentacles I can explore with you, and we only have, maybe about 10 or 15 minutes to go, and I want to get as much in as I possibly can. But, in considering your vast expertise, Professor, how bad, if you contrast this historically on the scale of the founding of the nation to where we are today, how bad is this if it's shown that there was no tangible probable cause, which it doesn't look like there was, as you just illustrated with the FISA documents and what was used to obtain them? How bad is this if it goes all the way up to President Obama himself in terms of knowing all about it?
I think it's pretty bad. I think if you look at Watergate, a lot of the agencies did not comply with requests to use the IRS or the FDA, and they resisted that. Or if you look at the JFK administration, the election of 1960, there were some irregularities in Illinois, or things, or Lincoln declared habeas corpus. He probably had to in certain places without congressional. He suspended habeas corpus. But I've never seen a situation in our history in which the bureaucratic state and a cabinet, the Obama cabinet, tried to subvert the campaign of a political opposition in the way that they did to Trump. And by that, I'm not being radical or hysterical, but I mean the idea that Hillary Clinton would hire a foreign national who then would hire other foreign nationals, in this case Christopher Steele hiring Russians, and then produce a dossier that had no support, and then they would give that to the State Department, the FBI, the CIA, and they would feed it to places like Mother Jones or Yahoo News or Washington Post before the election. And then before the election, they would go to surveil a former employee of Trump, a recent employee, and get all of his communications, and then use those communications and that right to continue to surveil people. And then when they lost, they would go into a second gear and try to do this during the transition. Whereas we had three efforts to go back to the FISA court. We had James Comey, who would actually go talk to the President of the United States and have classified information in that private conversation and deliberately leak to the press to injure the Trump administration. Or you had Rod Rosenstein, the active Deputy Attorney General, and Andrew McCabe, the acting FBI, that would meet and see if they could find a way to evoke the 25th Amendment to remove the President of the United States, who was elected. None of them were elected. So I don't think we've ever seen that myriad of efforts to destroy a presidency by government officials. And then the idea that you have these people like Comey and McCabe writing these self-serving memoirs, and then you have people like Brennan and Clapper every night on cable news, all putting out a false narrative that there was collusion and that Trump is some kind of monster and they're wonderful civil servants, when just the opposite was true. I've never seen anything like it. And they're still in denial, because if the Democrats, if they show any hedging on that, it's like a rotten timber that holds up a building. If you just kick it, it's going to fall in. And once Clapper has to retestify, or once they look at the Nunes referrals and Brennan has to explain the inconsistencies in his testimony, or what Glenn Simpson has to come and say, yes, I did lie to you people, or Comey says, okay, one of these memos was classified. Once that starts happening, you know what's going to happen. They're all going to be leveraged. They're all going to testify against each other. They're all going to call each other liars, and the whole edifice is going to collapse.
Well, yeah,
and that's what they can't afford to see happen.
Yeah, and they are doing their best to cover, circle the wagons and protect all of that. Do you expect that on that point? Do you expect that Attorney General Barr? Do you have confidence? I don't know how well you know him, if you know him at all, but do you expect that he will walk this all the way through to its natural conclusion, wherever it may take him?
Yeah, I do, for two or three reasons. He wrote a very good op-ed before he was Attorney General saying that there's no evidence of collusion, the President of the United States is not legally obligated to testify to a special counsel. That was correct. And then he said during his confirmation hearing he was in an age and a point in life where he really didn't care what people said about him. He really didn't need the job. He wasn't trying to ingratiate himself. And he'd been Attorney General before, so it wasn't a new thing for him. So he had kind of a fatalism I think is very important for that type of inquiry. And then more importantly, he's not going to have to do a lot. By that I mean you've got the Nunes referrals where millions of words and texts have been collated by the House Intelligence Committee, and they found inconsistencies apparently in testimony, and they're going to give it to him, referral. Then you have Michael Horowitz with over 100 employees, the Inspector General, who's going to give him things. We've got John Huber and out west who's going to give him things. And then you have all of these people who, for some reason, keep saying things. They write memoirs, they say things on television, and they're going to be called back into Lindsey Graham's Senate committee, and they're going to be asked, they're going to say, you said this on television. Is this true? I want you to repeat that under oath, because if you do repeat it under oath, it's exactly opposite of what you told another congressional committee under oath. And so I just don't think that you can have an FBI director who leaks confidential presidential memos or says to a committee 245 times, I don't remember, I don't know. If I did that to an IRS investigator, I'd be in jail. So I think we're so mesmerized by this collusion falsity, and we just got so inured to it that nobody just took a deep breath and said, my God, we've got 20 people in the DOJ and the FBI who have either been fired, quit, reassigned, or retired. That's never happened before. And so, what happened to Peter Strzok? Where did James Levicki go? What happened to James Baker? What happened to Andrew McCabe? Where's Comey? That hasn't happened. And they were fired, or they resigned, or they retired for a reason. That is, that they thought Hillary Clinton was going to win the election. It was a 100% deal. And they were going to do their little part, each according to their own station, in destroying Donald Trump and giving her an insurance policy. And then when she did not win, they were not going to be rewarded for that behavior. They might be caught or found out, so they doubled down and went on the offensive with this collusion hoax.
And now we have, Professor, the media, after this Barr said what he said, that he thought that spying did occur, now we have the media now trying to spin this outrageous story. As you pointed out, Mueller's team packed with Democrats, sympathizers, if you will, and now they're trying to spin this outrageous story that somehow Barr, Mueller, and it's all they're all in it. It's incredible. Instead of the truth being self-evident, which at some stage it's supposed to be, they keep doubling down like Wile E. Coyote and ended up with it exploding in their face. Do you think anything's going to change in that regard?
I don't. Because I think they're afraid if they don't keep on the offensive, then somebody is going to say, the emperor has no clothes. But
Trump's at 50.
They've nothing. They've forgotten nothing because they did this with Mueller. They kept saying Mueller's going to do this. Mueller's going to do this. Bombshell, news tightening, walls, and
right.
Nobody ever said to them, wait. Why didn't you just wait until the report?
The facts.
So now they've said Barr is prejudice, Barr is misinterpreting it, Barr is lying, but Barr is going to release this. And all they have to do is wait a week, and then they can take the Mueller report and the Barr summary and see if there's anything wrong. But they never do that. They just get hysterical and they get embarrassed time and time again. As we've seen, and the polls and the ratings show that CNN, to take one example, is completely discredited. Its fake news accounts are so legion you can't even count them.
Do you think
fired so many people from CNN?
Professor, do you think that will change their behavior? Dollars and cents usually rule the day, and when you start losing numbers, and numbers depend on ad dollars, at some point, I've been saying it for a couple of years, I keep expecting the boardroom to start saying, hey, wait a second, we need to be a little bit more balanced in our coverage. Do you think that's ever going to happen, or it's just going to keep going the way
it always does? Something that can't go on forever doesn't go on forever. And you're right, while corporate people that own CNN or MSNBC are liberal and they like the advocacy. At the bottom line, they're business people, and they see that Sean Hannity has a bigger audience than the entire lineup, 4 hours of news coverage of CNN. He alone in just an hour does.
That's incredible.
And it's incredible, and they don't want that. And their ads are not getting revenue to support the salaries they pay out. So at some point, if they don't change, they're going to have to bring in an outsider to clean house and restore the old CNN of the old days when you saw it in the airport and it was kind of politically neutral, maybe 30 years ago. Slightly left-wing, but not this crazy zealotry that we see now.
There's so many different directions we could go. I'd love to have you back down the road, Professor, but talking to kind of move now to the case for Trump. Now, Trump got my attention, Professor, when he slayed 16 well-known Republican politicians and then sliced and diced Hillary on national TV. And even then, I couldn't believe my eyes at 5 a.m. the next day, the day after the election, when Trump was declared the victor. When did he capture your discerning eye and mind? When did you look at Donald Trump and say, you know, there's something going on here that's for real?
Well, when he eliminated de facto most of the opposition by February, March, April of 2016, I said to myself, this field was much more gifted than 2012 or 8. They had CEOs, they had successful senators, great governors, and he destroyed them. And then I thought, he's got a traditional Republican message, but that message hasn't won in a long time. I mean, it hasn't got 51% of the votes in 1988, and it probably never will. But then he tweaked it. He said, you know, I'm for tax reductions and strong defense and energy and good judges and all that. But then he said, hey, you guys, China's not fated to win. They cheat, and there's no such thing as free trade if it's not fair. And people in the Midwest did not blow it. Their labor was replaced by people who didn't have their interest. It was offshored and outsourced and asymmetrical trade. And they're great people. We've got cheap energy in the United States. We can restore it. And you can't have a sovereign nation if you have an open border, and immigration can't be illegal and unmeasured and non-meritocratic and not diverse. And nobody in the Republican Party was saying that. And then he said, you know, if you go overseas and you get an optional engagement like Libya or Afghanistan, you got to win. And winning means, it doesn't matter if you win a battle in Kabul or Tripoli, but at the end of the day, in a cost-benefit analysis, it's got to have the strategic advantage of the United States at heart. And if it doesn't, it's not worth it. Well, the Republican establishment just didn't understand what he was saying, but he had an animal cunning. He was saying things that appealed to people who would decide the election. And by that I mean the Reagan Democrat, the parole voter, the Tea Party voter in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, that the Republicans just couldn't win. And he got 6 or 7 million of them to come back out of the woodwork and vote for him. And that meant, in real terms, by very small margins, 80, 90,000 votes, he flipped all those key states and destroyed Hillary's blue wall. That was absolutely brilliant, the way he did it. And then when he campaigned against Hillary, he went on the offensive. Every time she went after his business, he went after Uranium One and the Clinton collusion with Russia and Ukraine and all the money that the Clintons had made. Every time they went after women in this past, he went after Bill Clinton. And people said to themselves, wow, he may be randy and kind of checkered career, but that was in private business. She's been doing it in public life.
Yeah, she's been in government almost all her life, and what could she really point to as her successes?
Absolutely.
Professor, we have about 3 minutes left. I have to ask you this because it's just remarkable to me. I'm gathering that it may be to you as well. President Trump, since he was elected, as we all know, has been surrounded by the opposition, the media, the Democrat, many in the Democrat on the Democrat side of the aisle, many in his own party, the Republicans, some within his circle that he's had to filter out. How, on a scale of things that have occurred in the country, how remarkable is it that he is still standing unfettered, undeterred in his mission to make America great again? I'm in awe. I'm not in awe of a lot of people.
I am too. And I've written about this. I mentioned it in the book. I don't understand. I'm 65, and I'm in pretty good shape. But if I was 40 pounds overweight and I was 72 and I slept 5 hours a night and I woke up in the morning and the first thing I read was that there was an attack on my daughter, on my son, on my wife, or there was a lie about me, or they said I was going to be indicted or put in jail. And then when I went to bed at night, that's the last thing I heard again. And then I looked at the Weekly Standard or National Review of Commentary. All the sources were Republicans are supported, and all I got was attacks against me. And then I turned on the news, and, it was just all anti-Trump all the time. I was called a racist, a bigot. I don't know how he can do it. It's almost, Friedrich Nietzsche said, anything that didn't kill him made him stronger, and I guess that's what Trump is.
And it seems to be resonating.
Empathy from people. I think you're right. People now say, the SOB, I might not have voted for him, but my God, I admire that guy. He never gave up.
He just won't. He doesn't stop. It's something else. Professor, my last question is with regard to the Democrat Party. And by the way, folks, we're talking with Professor Victor Davis Hanson. He's got his new New York Times best-selling book, The Case for Trump. Professor, the Democrat Party has 20 or so candidates running for president. Their platform is one is more outrageous than the other. It's obviously, I don't think it's going to resonate with the American people. But here's my question. I had a guest on yesterday, Gerard Lamero, and he predicted that the Democrat Party will be non-existent by 2021. The House returned to conservatives in 2020. Seats increased in the Senate. He thinks the nation's moving conservative very quickly. What is your take on that? How do you see the Democrat Party progressing?
Well, I would agree that I don't think it exists if we think of Bill Clinton's old effort to be centrist, because these issues, whether it's infanticide, reparations, wealth tax, Green Deal, 16-year-old voting, whatever they are, they don't have 50% support, not even close. And it's an identity politics party now. And they've got three white male guys that are running, Beto, Bernie, and Biden, and all of them are apologizing for their race and gender. And so it's a party in chaos. And without the Mueller investigation and impeachment, they have no agenda that anybody wants. So the question, the $64,000 question is, are they going to go the McGovern or Walter Mondale route? If they do, they'll have a landslide loss of that magnitude, or is somebody, a Michael Bloomberg or Michelle Obama, going to come in and say, now calm down, I'm going to pose as Obama did in 2008 as kind of a nice guy, or I'm going to be kind of a centrist and try to mask who they really are. If they don't do that, then yeah, I agree. If Cory Booker and a Beto ticket or Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, it'll be a landslide. Nobody wants that.
Victor Davis Hanson, thank you so much, Professor. Just so you know, Gerard also predicted Michelle would enter the race for 2020, just as you mentioned. Very, very interesting. Professor, thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to talking with you down the road, folks. Check out his book, The Case for Trump. Victor Davis Hanson, thanks for joining us in the Klein Time program on News Talk 1400 WOND.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great afternoon. Stay right there, folks. We'll be back. ABC News coming up here, top of the hour. Boy, that's a lot of information in 25 minutes. We'll talk about it on the other side. This is Klein Time, 609-927-1100. Back in a moment.
South Jersey's News Talk, 1400 WOND.
WOND Pleasantville.
Hi there, Jim Crane for the Pleasantville Music Shop, where we're having our Swing into Spring sale. Great swinging sale prices on all new and used pianos and keyboards. We've got everything